Chapter 23. The Power of the Talisman. At this moment, Man Yun's originally delicate and pretty face was covered with black striations, and there were no pupils in his eyes. There was only a hollow, dense white color, and there was an obvious wolf head seal on his forehead. His body was also several meters taller than before, and his relatively small body seemed to be filled with strength. There were faint black flames all around his body. Xiao Yan could tell Man Yun's strength with just a glance, peak of the 9 stars. Taking a deep breath, Xiao Yan could not help but smack his lips. These people from the barbarian domain really had a lot of tricks up their sleeves. In just a short while, their strength had risen from the 8 stars realm to the peak of the 9 stars realm. It was obvious that Man Li had also noticed Man Yun, who had stood up. He turned around and looked. When he saw Man Yun's strength, his expression couldn't help but change drastically. He said furiously, "How is this possible? How can you have this kind of strength?" When he heard the furious voice of Man Li, Man Yun did not say a word and just quietly looked at the former. His face gradually turned pale under the black striations. "Bastard. A bastard like you can actually reach the peak of the 9 stars realm." Man Li felt a trace of fear in his heart, and he couldn't help but feel terrified. He looked at Man Yun, who had an indifferent expression on his face. He made up his mind and shouted furiously. His 5 fingers turned into claws as he rushed towards Man Yun. Seeing Man Li rushing towards him impatiently, the corner of Man Yun's mouth curled up into a strange smile. He said, "Man Li, Man Chungshan is an old dog because my mother is from the spirit domain. That's why he imprisoned my mother in the barbarian punishment region. Today, I will use the trump card that my mother gave me to kill you, as a way to avenge my mother." After saying that, he stretched out both of his hands and curled them into claws. The black flames around his body surged into his hands, causing his hands to turn into a faint black crystal color. A fierce aura instantly erupted from Man Yun's hands. "With just you." Man Li laughed angrily, and the strength in his hands became even greater. Boom! Both of his hands collided, and the powerful airflow caused Zhou Wei's dust to fly in the air. Man Yun crossed his arms and blocked Man Li's sharp claws. Then, he shouted out loudly, and black flames started circulating on his arms. The next moment, Man Li was shot out like a cannonball. His body was smashed. The rock was smashed into pieces. After sending Man Li flying with one move, Man Yun felt the waves of weakness coming from his body. He looked at the place where Man Li had fallen, and his empty eyes flashed with endless killing intent. Immediately, he let out a furious roar and rushed forward. After being sent flying by Man Yun, Man Li felt his chest was filled with endless humiliation. He was the future son of the northern barbarian king and had a high status. Hong Long. Asterisk. He jumped up from the ground and wiped his mouth. Man Li saw the shocking dark red blood on his hand and said fiercely, "Blood. That trash actually spat out my noble blood." When he saw Man Yun rushing towards him, Man Li let out a furious roar, both of his eyes turned red. He raised his giant fist and threw it at Man Yun. Man Yun let out a cold laugh. He also extended his giant fist to meet Man Li's incoming fist. Bang! The moment the 2 fists collided, the wolf head seal on Man Yun's forehead suddenly flashed with a white light. Following a miserable roar, the wolf head seal returned to normal. "Bastard!" Man Yun threw another punch at the wolf head seal. When he felt the intense pain in his right hand, his fury soared to the sky. His huge body kept trembling. His blood-red eyes were fixed on Man Yun. And he wished he could swallow Man Yun alive. Looking at what had just happened, Xiao Yan's nervous heart was finally relieved. Judging from the situation, it was obvious that Man Yun had the upper hand. It was only a matter of time before he killed Man Li. However, when he saw Man Yun's face getting paler and paler under the black striations, Xiao Yan's worries were lifted once again. Suppressing the dizziness in front of him, Man Yun said in an indifferent tone, "Man Li, you are no match for me now. You can die now." After saying that, he was about to attack. Man Li suddenly grinned hideously and said, "Man Yun, you think too highly of yourself." He was just a bastard, yet he dared to speak so arrogantly. "I'm the future prince of the Northern Barbarian Empire, how dare you kill me? My father will definitely slaughter all of your people to avenge me." Man Yun looked at Man Li coldly and spat out a word, "Die." After saying that, he did not wait for Man Li to speak. His body moved slightly and arrived next to Man Li. He threw a huge punch at the bloody hole that was drilled out by Xiaoyan's fire blade. Man Li was once again sent flying several meters away by Man Yun. His huge body was covered in blood. He struggled to stand up. Man Li suddenly smiled hideously and said, "Man Yun, do you think you can easily kill me? You have to know my identity. The future crown prince of the Northern Barbarian Empire. Do you think my father didn't prepare anything for me?" Under Xiao Yan and Man Yun's serious gaze, Man Li stretched out his palm with a ferocious smile on his face. There was a medicine pill the size of a longan on his palm. The medicine pill was black in color. It was emitting a scorching hot aura. "Blood barbarian pill, Man Li, you dare to eat this?" He coldly laughed. Man Yun said indifferently. Even so, the seriousness in Man Yun's eyes deepened. "Although the aftereffects of this thing are very strong after eating it, it's enough to kill you." Man Li smiled coldly and swallowed the blood barbarian pill in his hand. "Damn it!" Seeing Man Li swallow the blood barbaric pill, Man Yun furiously shouted. He immediately rushed towards Man Lizhen. After Man Li swallowed the blood barbarian pill, his face instantly turned red, and wisps of smoke rose from his head. At the same time, Man Li's originally distorted face became even uglier due to anger. His eyes were so red that it seemed as if they could drip water. A series of furious roars that sounded like devil beasts came from his throat. Man Yun rushed forward. His huge fist carried a heavy wind-breaking sound as it smashed towards Man Li. Just as the huge fist was about to land on Man Li's body, a dazzling black light suddenly burst out from the latter's body. In the blink of an eye, Man Li's body was covered in layers of protection. Man Yun's punch was like hitting a hard rock. He was forced back a few steps. He looked at Man Li, who was screaming in pain, with an ugly expression on his face. Man Yun's hands trembled slightly. He looked at Xiao Yan and smiled bitterly. "Mr. Xiao, you should leave now. This guy can at least advance to the strength of a second Dao sovereign after consuming the blood barbarian pill. At that time, it will be difficult to deal with him." Xiao Yan, who had already recovered some of his origin ki, stood up and looked at Man Yun. He said in a deep voice, "When the time comes, are you confident that you can kill him?" Man Yun shook his head bitterly. "I am not sure." Xiao Yan smiled. "I still want to stay in forest domain. If I don't kill him now, I will have a lot of trouble in the future. Therefore, he must die today." Man Yun took a deep breath after hearing this. He gritted his teeth and nodded. "All right. In that case, I will kill him no matter what." Xiao Yan threw a ki recovery pill to Man Yun. He looked at Man Yun's pale face and thought for a while. He said, "Brother Man, how long can your condition last?" Man Yun looked at Man Li. The latter's angry roar gradually lowered, but his ki suddenly increased. He instantly surpassed Man Yun and stopped for a while. Very quickly, it was as if he had broken through to the next realm, and his aura rapidly increased. Gritting his teeth, Man Yun said, "I can't maintain this state for too long. At most, I can hold on for a few more minutes before the origin monarch ki in my body is completely exhausted." Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes and looked at Man Li. He mumbled, "A few minutes." Then he let out a light breath. Just as he was about to speak, Man Yun suddenly said, "Mr. Xiao, can you block Man Li's attack for me?" Xiao Yan was stunned. He looked at Man Yun and said happily, "Brother Man, you have a solution." Man Yun nodded with a serious expression and said, "I think so. But it will take a long time to prepare." Xiao Yan looked at him and nodded without saying anything. Then, he walked towards Man Li. Man Yun looked at Xiao Yan gratefully and then closed his eyes. The wolf head on his forehead seemed to have become a living creature. He raised his head and roared towards the sky. At the same time, a faint white light appeared around Man Yun's body. Sensing Man Yun's breath gradually becoming messy behind him, Xiao Yan let out a light breath. He looked at Man Li, who was slowly opening his eyes, and slowly clenched his fists. Hee. Man Li finally opened his eyes after a burst of cold laughter. At the same time, the layer of black light around his body disappeared in an instant. At this moment, Man Li's entire body seemed to be covered in dark red blood. The red light in his eyes kept flashing. Saliva kept flowing out from the corner of his mouth like a thirsty devil beast, without a trace of humanity. "It's you." Man Li's red eyes stared at Xiao Yan for a long time before he slowly said, Then, he licked his lips and grinned hideously. That's fine. Since both of you are going to die, I will kill you before killing Man Yun. As soon as he finished speaking, a red light shone in Man Li's eyes. His body flashed and disappeared in front of Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan, who was staring at him, did not change his expression. Almost at the same time, he flapped his heavenly phoenix wings and charged forward. In the next moment, Man Li's sharp claws fiercely struck the place where Xiao Yan originally stood. Instantly, gravel flew everywhere. Looking at Man Li's shocking increase in destructive power, Xiao Yan was slightly shocked. His eyes became more and more serious. The strength of the two sovereign warriors was indeed terrifying. They were more than a level stronger than the 9-star Dodi. One strike missed. Man Li raised his head and looked at Xiao Yan. The smile on his face was extremely sinister under the contrast of fresh blood. Your reaction is not bad. Man Li showed his white teeth and licked his lips with his red tongue. Then he laughed and stomped on the ground. In an instant, he jumped dozens of feet high and threw a huge punch at Xiao Yan. There was no time to dodge. Seeing the huge fist getting bigger and bigger in his eyes, Xiao Yan gritted his teeth. Little Yi transformed into a scarlet golden flame and appeared in his hand. In the next moment, it turned into a raging fire lion. He welcomed the giant fist. Boom! A loud explosion was heard. Along with the wailing of the fire lion, Xiao Yan was also knocked back several feet as if he had suffered a heavy blow. He crashed into an ancient tree. Xiao Yan stood up with great difficulty. He looked at Man Li, who was falling from the sky. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. This guy was much stronger than before. He saw Man Li rushing towards him once again. Xiao Yan looked at his red eyes. He flapped his heavenly phoenix wings again and flew into the sky. The punch missed. Just as Man Li was about to jump up again, he heard a fierce gust of wind coming from behind. Without hesitation, he turned around and threw a huge punch. Bang! Man Li's giant fist landed heavily on the latter's body. An unexpected scream was heard. Only a deafening sound of metal could be heard. Because he had swallowed the blood barbaric pill, Man Li was like a devil beast. His thoughts were extremely rigid as he looked at Xiao Yan, who was sent flying by his punch. Man Li let out a strange laugh and charged forward once again. In an instant, he caught up with Xiao Yan, who was sent flying backwards, and kicked him. The kick landed on the latter's chest, causing the latter's chest to cave in deeply. Go to hell. After letting out a low roar that sounded like a devil beast, Man Li swung his fist down, striking the latter's head with a powerful sound of breaking wind. Without a single scream, the latter's head instantly broke into pieces like a watermelon. Seeing no blood flowing out, Man Li was stunned for a moment. It took him a long time to realize that this was a puppet. Roar! Man Li immediately let out an inhuman roar. The red light in his eyes flickered intensely. He then raised his head and looked at Xiao Yan, who was standing on top of the giant tree. Seeing that Man Li had finally found him, Xiao Yan glanced at Man Yun. He was slightly delighted in his heart. Man Yun's chi had already stabilized. A huge white spirit wolf was slowly forming behind him. Xiao Yan felt sorry for the destruction of Di in his heart. He quickly dodged and barely dodged Man Li's punch. At the same time, he flicked his 10 fingers. Colorful fire lotuses were continuously thrown out, slightly blocking Man Li's attack. Boom! After throwing countless fire lotuses, just as the Xiao Yans in Xiao Yan's body were about to be consumed, Man Yun, who was not far away, suddenly opened his eyes. A frightening aura erupted from Xiao Yan's body. Man Li, who had been furious, was also shocked by this aura. He couldn't help but look at Man Yun. When he saw the white spirit wolf behind Man Yun, he broke out in a cold sweat. Void Spirit Wolf Talisman. Man Li's mind seemed to have recovered a lot from the shock. He stared at the spirit wolf behind Man Yun with a dumbfounded expression. He clearly remembered that when Man Yun's mother used this technique, she had severely injured one of his heavenly sovereign-level granduncle with the strength of a monarch cultivation. The shock he received from that battle was too great. This time, when he saw Man Yun use the same technique, even though he had the devil beast in his mind, he still instinctively felt fear. Man Yun's face was extremely pale, and his body was on the verge of collapse. He managed to stand up and smiled at Man Li, who was a little frightened. He waved his hand gently and said softly, "Go." After he said that, he seemed to have lost all strength in his body. He fell to the ground. As Man Yun waved his hand, the spirit wolf faced the sky and let out a long howl. Then, like a bolt of lightning, it streaked across the sky and struck towards Man Li. Being locked by Ling Lang's powerful aura, Man Li was unable to move at all. Seeing the spirit wolf getting closer and closer, Man Li furiously roared. The black light screen appeared once again and protected him tightly. In the next moment, the spirit wolf roared and bombarded the black light barrier. It only lasted for a moment before the black light curtain quietly shattered. The spirit wolf's bloody mouth was about to swallow him in the midst of Man Li's terrified roar. At the same time, in a remote mountain range that was unknown how far away he was, a bronze ancient ship filled with a primal aura stopped here. Not far away, a stooped figure, suddenly, a white-haired old man with a serene expression was fishing alone. The fishing hook in his hand shook, and the old man slowly opened his turbid eyes. A trace of shock flashed across his eyes, and he turned his head to look far away from the mountain. Just as he was hesitating, an even older sigh came from within the bronze warship. It's Man Xiao's son. This little fellow is really not simple. He actually used Ning Ying's family's spirit talisman technique. When the fishing elder heard this, a trace of worry flashed across his face. If that Man Li dies, Man Chengsheng won't be able to explain himself. The old voice coldly harumphed. What's there to explain? I have already given Man Yun and Man Li enough face by promising him to join the group trial. If Man Li dies, then so be it. If that old man is dissatisfied, I'm not afraid of him. The old man laughed lightly, then put his worries aside and started fishing in peace. After a long time, he suddenly muttered to himself, however, an 8-star Do sovereign will be able to open the talisman of the spirit domain's Ning clan. His future achievements will probably surpass his father's. It was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but a long time later, the old man in the bronze warship had passed. Chapter end.